Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Indianapolis Colts 2018 NFL Draft Class based on analytics. So we're going to go through the entire draft class and see what they looked like based on athleticism and production data. If you're new to the channel and new to the work that I do, all terms and definitions will be in the description. But essentially what we're going to do today is we're going to see what the likelihood of these players panning out at the NFL level is based on how prior players have performed based on similar data and similar information. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to the first pick of the draft, which of course is Quinton Nelson, offensive guard out of Notre Dame. When you look at his athleticism testing at 68.62, explosive lower body strength score, 78.24, speed score, and a 90.28 flexibility score. In many ways, he hit every single threshold you're looking for in terms of All-Pro and Pro Bowl potential. And when you look at the averages at the position, looks a little bit closer to a Pro Bowl guard than a multiple All-Pro guard, but still very good overall testing, especially when you look at it from the average athleticism standpoint. In general, Quinton Nelson was one of the few offensive linemen or just players in general with All-Pro potential, and this is a very, very good pick when you look at it from that kind of perspective. Then, of course, you get to the next pick of the draft, which, of course, is Darius Leonard, linebacker out of South Carolina State. When you look at his production data, had a 99.39 solo tackle production score at the FCS level, which is very, very good. He hits the All-Pro threshold, Pro Bowl threshold. The only question mark, of course, is that his production was at a lower level competition. And when you look at his athleticism testing, he only had a 48.58 speed score for his size, which doesn't really hit the All-Pro threshold or even the Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to his speed. And didn't really do any other testing either. So he didn't do the vertical and the broad jump. He didn't do the short shuttle and the three cone to determine his other athleticism traits. However, I think he has a strong enough profile to project as a long-term starter. But it is kind of troublesome that he didn't do any other athleticism testing throughout the process. And of course, we get to Braden Smith, offensive guard out of Auburn. When you look at his athleticism testing at a 96.68 explosive lower body strength score, 65.90 speed score, and 61.11 flexibility score, essentially hits Pro Bowl potential in terms of the bottom and thresholds at the position. And when you look at the averages at the position, he looks closer to a long-term starter than an All-Pro / Pro Bowl player because he doesn't quite have as much speed and flexibility as most All-Pro and Pro Bowl guards, but still very good profile. Could end up becoming a long-term starter. In fact, very high likelihood he becomes a long-term starter. So again, very, very solid overall projection for Braden Smith at the NFL level. And of course, we get to Kimoko Turay, edge out of Rutgers. When you get to his production data, he had an 81.81 solo tackle score, 50.15 sack score, and a 39.23 tackle for loss score. Doesn't really hit any of the Pro Bowl thresholds when you look at his overall data, except for solo tackle data. The reason why you drafted him, honestly, is because of athleticism data, 44.40 in terms of explosiveness, 73.29 in terms of speed, and 93.45 in terms of flexibility. In many ways, he is a edge rusher that has Pro Bowl level athleticism without the Pro Bowl level production. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens with Turay. That's the only question mark. He has great athleticism traits, but doesn't quite have the production of a All-Pro / Pro Bowl player, but could end up becoming a long-term starter and could be someone that has a pretty decent career arc. So even though he wasn't a Pro Bowl and All-Pro player, he is someone that could develop in a couple years and pay off with, say, a double-digit sack season here and there in a couple years. Then, of course, we get to Taekwon Lewis, edge rusher at Ohio State. Look at his production data, 66.70 in terms of solo tackle data, 51.94 in terms of sack data, and 66.90 in terms of tackle for loss data. Pretty much hits the Pro Bowl thresholds in terms of solo tackle data and TFL data, but doesn't quite hit that data when it comes to sacks. But similar to Turay, great athlete, 89.98 in terms of explosiveness, 87.58 in terms of speed, and 85.68 in terms of flexibility for his size. Similar projection to Turay. Doesn't quite have the production indicative of a multiple Pro Bowl, multiple All-Pro edge rusher, but definitely has the athleticism traits and at least above average production, has above average production in many ways, that he could end up becoming a long-term starter or better at some point in his career. So definitely a guy that that may not be amazing right out of the box, but could develop into something interesting in a couple years. Then, of course, you get to Hines, running back out of North Carolina State. When you get to his production data, he had a 41.46 market share production score. Does not hit the All-Pro threshold, 5-time Pro Bowl threshold, or 3-time Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to his position. And doesn't really hit the averages either. When you look at the average All-Pro score, average Pro Bowl score, and average starter score for a running back since 1969 is well below what those averages are. But has some good athleticism traits. When you look at him, he had a 48.41 explosive lower body strength score, 87.42 speed score, and 43.88 flexibility score. When it comes to the running back position, multiple All-Pro/Pro Bowl running backs since 1999 had at least one 79 or higher athleticism trait, and Hines has at least one when it comes to his speed score. So there definitely is a shot that he could potentially become an All-Pro/Pro Bowl outlier if his athleticism is what carries the day in terms of his projection. And of course, we get to Daurice Fountain, wide receiver out of Northern Iowa. When you get to his production data, he had a 65.74 passing yardage market share production score, which doesn't really hit the 5-time All-Pro, 3-time All-Pro, or 3-time Pro Bowl bottom end threshold when it comes to all wide receivers since 1969, but he does hit at least above the long-term starter threshold. When you look at his data compared against All-Pro, Pro Bowl, and starters, he is a little bit below what most All-Pro and Pro Bowl players have, and even starters to a certain extent. And this was also against lower level competition. So his market share data is not that amazing, especially when you look at it through the lens of someone coming from the FCS level. But he does have pretty decent athleticism traits, 97.70 in terms of explosiveness, 62.66 in terms of speed, and 54.50 in terms of flexibility for his size. Pretty much has All-Pro/Pro Bowl athleticism traits, but his production is the only major question mark with him, which seems to be a theme with a lot of the players in this Colts class. It's guys that have great athleticism traits in certain ways, but don't necessarily have great production to match that athleticism. Then, of course, you get to Jordan Wilkins, running back out of Ole Miss. When you look at his production data, very similar to Hines, 43.98 in terms of his market share production. When you look at the averages, same issue as Hines, where he doesn't really hit close to the average starter, Pro Bowl, or All-Pro player. And when it comes to athleticism, he's not even close to Hines, though, because he doesn't have any 79 or higher athleticism traits, only had a 55.73 explosive lower body strength score and an 11.58 speed score. So he's the one player in this class where there's a disconnect between athleticism and everything else. So not great production, doesn't have great athleticism traits, but we'll ultimately see what happens with him long term. And of course, we get to Deon Cain, wide receiver out of Clemson. Production-wise, 44.24 in terms of his market share production. Doesn't quite hit the 3-time Pro Bowl area, 3-time All-Pro area, or 5-time All-Pro area, or not even the long-term starter threshold, to the bottom end threshold when it comes to long-term starter since 1969. So definitely lots of question marks with his production. When you look at the averages at the position, well below what the average is for a long-term starter, Pro Bowler, and All-Pro player, but does have some positive athleticism traits, 31.64 in terms of explosiveness, 79.28 in terms of speed, and 74.56 in terms of flexibility for his size. Pretty decent profile when it comes to athleticism, but definitely doesn't have the production to match that. So again, another player where the Colts seem to be drafting athleticism over production. Then we get to Matthew Adams, linebacker out of Houston. When you look at his production data, 51 in terms of his solo tackle production score. Doesn't really hit the All-Pro threshold or Pro Bowl threshold, but does hit at least above the starter threshold. And you can see the averages here, just kind of well below what the averages are in terms of All-Pro, Pro Bowl, and starter potential. And when you get to his athleticism traits, 55.55 in terms of explosiveness, 70.39 in terms of speed, and 56.96 in terms of flexibility for his size. Does not hit all the bottom end thresholds in terms of Pro Bowl potential at the linebacker position, but does hit at least the starter thresholds. I think in many ways Matthew Adams' best upside is as a starter, but more likely will end up being a backup just because of how low his production data is. Then the final player of the draft, of course, is Zaire Franklin, linebacker out of Syracuse. 79.99 in terms of solo tackle production, which pretty much hits above the bottom end threshold for a Pro Bowl player. And is close to the starter average of 79.20. And on top of that, when you look at his athleticism traits, 93.50 in terms of explosiveness, 86.83 in terms of speed, and 91.96 in terms of flexibility. Pretty much has all-pro level athleticism traits. Looks closer to a Pro Bowl player than an All-Pro player when you look at his speed score, but still very strong overall profile when you look at his production data and his athleticism data, and could end up becoming a long-term starter for the Colts based on those two factors. So overall, when you look at the Colts draft class, I think this is a pretty decent draft class, all said and done. I think that, you know, again, when you look at the guards that they drafted, both those guys have a very good chance of becoming long-term starting guards. I think most of the edge rushers they drafted don't have high-quality upside, so it's very unlikely that they become consistent All-Pro / Pro Bowl edge rushers, but definitely have a good shot to become long-term starters. I think the wide receivers they drafted could end up becoming long-term starters, or at least something interesting. Same thing with the linebackers they drafted as well. Common theme with this class, again, really high on athleticism, not too high in terms of actual production on the field, but definitely, but when you do bet on athleticism, there are some times when you can win. So ultimately, I think that's what the Colts are doing. They're trying to bet on athleticism here, and I do think that some of those bets will pay off. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about this Colts draft class? And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at JimMetrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.